Exodus chapter 2. Let me set the stage. My theory, my premise, for those who were not here, you can go back and you can watch it online, catch it, was taken from actually Luke chapter 10, where a lawyer who was tempting Jesus, trying to justify himself and secure his life and future, want to make sure he was right, asked him questions about, being right with him. And he led him to the Old Testament Torah, the text that says, you know what the scripture said, and he's repeated it to him. He said, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy mind, thy soul, and thy strength, right? And then he says, and love thy neighbor as thyself. As Luke 10:27. I'm not going to read it back again to what, but my premise that I hung this sermon and now too on is those two words, as thyself. Say those words, as thyself. And here is the text. Don't miss it again in case you missed it before. You can't ultimately really come to know how to love God or your neighbor till you find a way to love yourself. And so as thyself is the theme of these messages, as thyself. Last week, I dealt with this issue of as thyself, and I looked at Exodus 1. I want to read Exodus 2 today to give the closing part of this message. I tried to tie it together, but just 10 verses in Exodus 2. I think I want to read this from a different version. Y'all got the King James up there on the screen, but if y'all don't mind, let me just, I got my old trusty dusty right here. I want to make sure some of my visiting friends that may not be familiar with the King understands this clearly. Verse 1 says, and a man of the house of Levi went and took as a wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, dubbed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the river's bank. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. Then the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river. And her maidens walked along the riverside, and when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby cried out. So she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. My God. She called the child's mother. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman, his mama, took the child and nursed him. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So she called his name Moses, because I drew him out of the water. I'm going to tell y'all now, I ain't going to deal with all of that, but I do want to shine a sermonic spotlight on these last 2 points of as thyself. And I want to tag this portion of the text with this thought today. And y'all pray for my sinus drainage that's trying to ease in on me here, but I refuse to not preach this sermon. I want to talk from this thought, if you don't mind. Loving yourself by preserving and protecting your valuable legacy. Loving yourself by accepting the challenge to love and protect your valuable legacy. Loving yourself by accepting the challenge to love and protect your valuable legacy. I asked the question before I quit last time, what do you consider valuable? I go further to ask the question, who do you consider valuable? I argued the text that starts with you last week, that said that God made you fearfully and wonderfully and programmed you for greatness. And you ought not let nobody mess up your tapes. You ought not let some virus contaminate your divine software. Knowing that God made you with his best stuff. A brain better than any computer, Apple or Android could be made. Better cameras in your eyes than any one that you could ever manufacture. With more real intelligence than any artificial intelligence that they can ever come up with. You have no reason to fear when it comes to trusting that God put his good stuff, his best stuff in you. The only challenge is that God knows it, but do you know it? Other people can maybe see some things on you about you, but what do you see when you think about you? What happened to your dreams? What happened to your goals? What happened to your ambition? What happened to those things that you saw clearly and brightly as a child, growing up, beaming up, and wanting to be this, that, and the other? We wanted to be so much growing up, they would ask these questions. What do you want to be? And we just spout off about 10, 12 things. It didn't matter because the dreaming capacity suggested there was no limitations on what we might choose to become. What happened? At some point in life, we must know that the enemy of life is not the devil trying to stop you based on where you are at any point in time, but to try to keep you from your manifest destiny that God purposed you to achieve. And the only way you're going to get there is you got to learn every step of the way that if don't nobody else love you, care about you, think nothing but you. Baby mama, love yourself. The only thing worse than somebody thinking they're better than you is when you think you're less than anybody. Now, again, hear me right. I ain't say be in love with yourself, because some of y'all went way over the line. But the greatest threat to excellence is arrogance. And the inability or capacity to be critiqued by someone who can see how to make you your better self. I know you think you know everything, but you don't. I know you think you can see everything, but you can't. I don't care what kind of car you got. You got blind spots that somebody's going to have to help you with to see along the way. I don't care what kind of prophet or prophetess you may be, think you can see around the corner, but somebody about to hit you in the back of your head if you don't get somebody that might help you along the way. No man, no woman is an island. Nobody makes it alone. We're not made to make it that way. God can take the most insignificant things of life and give you some of the most profound things you've ever seen, said, or heard. We're made to be in community. We're made to be connected. God has a way, hallelujah, of putting us in places ultimately because he wants us to develop our best self. He wants you to be partnered with people who will help bring out your best self. One of the reasons why you can't quite get to the place you ought to be is just as soon as you climb the ladder of ascension to make one or two good steps, you fool around and find that old person that you got rid of 20 years ago and bring them back, and there you go sliding back down. You do know that once you push block, you don't have to push unblock. You blocked them for a reason. One of the reasons why you came to a different service, sat on a different side of church, is because you tried to get away from some things that you learned wasn't quite good for me and toxic for me. But you need to realize the devil don't ever quit. Oh, yeah. You can put on a nice shirt, tie, find that service, put on the nice newest cologne, meet you at the offering table, happen to come by to see you. Hey, boo. Next thing you know, Pastor, can you counsel us? No. Because at some point, we try to find people that we can attach to us that make us our best self. But God says your best self starts with me and you. If you can't be one with God by yourself, you don't need to be with nobody else. You don't make wholeness continuing to mess with fractions. You become one. You get reduced to terms that are lower than you were intended. Here, when God says to you, I love you. Here, when God says to you, you matter. And last week I talked about you saying it to yourself, and I made you take some time to whisper that love note to yourself. How many of y'all said it to yourself at least once this week? And you see you fell out of love that fast. See, that's one like I got. You was all in love, ready to take yourself on a date last week, and now here you are. Who are you? Who are you? Listen, no. But not only today are you destined to find that love for yourself, but you got to learn how to identify greatness in someone else. Amen. That God has destined you to protect till they can learn to love themselves too. Do you know many people don't have the capacity to love themselves because they never learned to love themselves? They were never nurtured in a place where love was a surrounding atmosphere. They never understood that they were not meant to be raised in hostile environments, that you don't have to worry about what all they shut down in the government, every place else, as long as your house is the place where the love of God reigns. Everything doesn't emanate from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It starts at your address. It starts where you live. It germinates and generates from the place where God has established wherever your abode is. And not only are you responsible for your own self and its love, and that's important because you can't learn or teach anybody else about how to love themselves if you don't quite love yours. I know I'm still hovering over a place. I told you I'm getting off that first point from last week, but I got a few more molecules in there. Some of y'all ain't get it. On the plane flight, you all know when they give you that announcement that talks to you about how do you need to buckle up and all that kind of stuff. They make the statement and say, in the case of loss of cabin pressure, yes, a mask will descend. Right? And some of y'all think that that mask, might be in the Christian context best used in case you're carrying a small child, because they tell you, in case you carry a small child or a screaming husband, they say, you would think, put the mask on the baby. Young, you didn't live your life, you didn't had enough oxygen sucked up for a while. Get a baby some air. You can make it through, you can swim. But that's not what it says. It says, in the case of the loss of cabin pressure, secure your mask first. I'm saying that for somebody who thinks this text sounds selfish when you say, as thyself. Well, I got to put me. No. You must secure your mask before you can help somebody else with theirs. How you going to help somebody else breathe if you gasping for life all the time? How are you going to help somebody find their way if you lost most of the time? If your GPS and coordinates don't connect, you can't tell me where I need to go. My daddy said it simply, don't never let a loser tell you how to win. And I want to say to you, if I just hover around that last point one last time, you have to secure yours first. Exodus chapter 1, remember, he has to remind them that no matter what was happening, yes, based on Pharaoh's edicts, because last week we told you that there came a new Pharaoh that acted like he didn't know Joseph. There rose one, verse 8. The text says that knew not Joseph. It didn't mean he didn't know who he was. It means he didn't respect who he was and what he did. You can't be number 45, not 47, and not know 44. Just trying to get the numbers right. But if you don't like someone's policies, you can come in and erase things like you never knew them. You can't be 47 and forget. Whatever the numbers are, you got to at least try to build off the good of something you see and try to make it better. Isn't that how life ought to be? But the reason why, especially in black folk religion, we can never grow to great heights is new people always come into office and think they're supposed to tear everything down that somebody did before so you can put your own personality and identity on. No, the agenda ought to be bigger than you. If we got to keep starting over every 2 years, every 4 years, ain't no wonder we ain't got nowhere. You got to know something Joseph did you can help with. You got to establish some kind of policies that can help make a betterment and a difference. How do you forget somebody that saved you from a famine for 7 years? You was dying. How do you forget? I know his brothers tried to forget him, and his daddy even forgot. But listen, even though they tried to kill him, he'd been to jail and prison. He had gotten sexual harassment charges, everything. But God preserved his dreaming, interpreting life until the moment when God brought him to a place that when he became a dream interpreter, not just a dreamer, but one who can interpret dreams, God excelled him to the place of his destiny. And then his brothers had to depend on him for the dream he told them a long time ago. And his statement was, you meant it to me for evil. That's Genesis 50, in case you want to go back. Chapter 2, verse 20. But God. I love those but God moments. That's good closing stuff, but I'm just in the first part. But God intended it. Thank you, Jesus, for my good. So, you can't learn to love yourself if you don't understand or learn your history and know your identity. The only thing worse than somebody thinking they're better than you is when you think you are less than them. But beyond yourself, the text is tailored to teach us. Remember, chapter and verse was added later on for the sake of continuation. He goes straight into chapter 2 and starts talking about the birth of this baby. He goes from this issue of historical identity of people, because it says the more they got oppressed the people, the faster they grew. Some about oppressed people that they really, if you got the right stuff in you, you just keep on. Somebody said, we don't die, we. I thought y'all heard it somewhere before. Well, there was some multiplying going on. Y'all know how to multiply, don't you? Sometimes you got to know yourself before you know yourself. Yeah. See, there comes now Amram and Jochebed, who at a time of decreeing of killing children, they birthed this particular baby. The text is tailored to teach us, come. Listen, as the text says to us, that the man of the house of Levi, who was wife to this woman, conceived, bore a son, and he was, the text says, a goodly child. This was their seed. It's one of the reasons why I mentioned to you last week, be careful how you define your seed. Be careful how you talk to your seed. Be careful how you water your seed. Be careful, you see, because if you're upset with Amram or Jochebed, ain't no need to talk about how they just like their daddy, just like their mama, because that's what seed does. It produced, and the truth is, the child didn't choose which DNA components it would have. You did. I don't mean no harm, but at some point we make children feel guilty of the bad decisions we made. At some point we want to put labels on children as if they're the problem, when the fact is God gave you seed. Every orange has a seed in it. Every apple has a seed in it. Everything that's produced has a seed in it. I'm going somewhere. Don't lose this. Because the seed produces more of its kind. If you plant that seed, it'll grow another apple. That's why you have to be careful of the seed that you germinate, because it's going to make more of its kind. Are you listening to me? Yes, the children of Israel asked God for a deliverer, and he sent them a seed. He didn't give them a grown man. He sent a seed. I said earlier, he didn't drop a bomb. He dropped a baby. And he dropped it at a time that they were killing babies. So if they gave this child, this one born of Amram and Jochebed, this baby called Moses, this one that's in the text, and they're killing children left and right. Look at your neighbor and ask him, how do you think you made it? You see, you ask yourself the question, how you got to where you are today. Because some people think you made it because you were so good, you pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps, you had all that kind of stuff, because you hot, bag of chips, hot sauce. No. I could close the sermon by just going to an old song that says, somebody prayed for me, had me on their mind, took the time to pray for me. Somebody covered me when I couldn't cover myself. Somebody changed me when I couldn't change myself. Somebody fed me when I couldn't feed myself. Somebody took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. If you don't do nothing else before I close this sermon, can you just jump up on your feet and thank God for somebody that did something for you couldn't do for yourself, and thank God that they prayed for you. It is no goodness of my own. Yeah, call out names, whoever it is, mama, big mama, T, nanny, daddy. Don't forget it's some men that help too. But let me just say this to you. Truth is that after verse 1, you don't see Amram's name. But it's a whole lot of sisters' names. Not just Jochebed, but I see Shipra, I see Pua. Come on here now. Yeah. I see Miriam. Can I talk to some women in here? Can I? I know Women's History Month is March, but can I talk to y'all in February? Can I get y'all to stop blaming brothers? Can I just get y'all to just stop it. Stop blaming brothers. I don't care, but I know you want the child support. I know he ain't giving you nothing. I know all of that. But baby, they killing your children. And you ain't got but so much energy and time to put into this equation. And I want to introduce you to a text that said when there was no more mention of another man in the whole chapter to come forth, there were some women that got together and said, we're going to protect our most valuable asset. It is the legacy. It amazes me how we can get safes for our money, safe deposit box for our documents, insurance for our car, for our house, our wealth, our appliances. We get a license, bros, for the dogs and the fish and the gun. What else we get a license for? Just about anything you want. But you won't protect your seed? The legacy that God is establishing in this text, if you don't mind me just saying so, is one that has been passed on in a way that you can write your name in at any point in time you wish. Because I see in this text some men and women who ought to be like these great broad women, especially in this text, who decided at a time when Agent Orange had taken over and decreed that they're going to start killing off everybody, that they're not going to blame the government for nothing. They're going to start taking care of their own legacy. I see in the text at a time when Pharaoh had decided he going to do what he going to do, that these women said, well, we got to do what we got to do. Why did Jochebed need to hide little Moses? Moses, this baby that was born, why was it that she had, because while she was birthing this baby, she had some help. There were some people who were destined to do the killing. See, they knew mamas wasn't going to kill the babies when they saw them, so they got midwives. There was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and cray cray, in for $1. That's most of them deal with. But these two said, no, not us, because they looked at this child and said, we see something in them. They saw something in the child that wasn't even theirs. They saw something in the child that was birthed and they said, something about this one we can't let that happen to. They were passing off the girls and killing the boys. But they looked at this child and they decided that we'd rather go to jail or get in trouble with the authorities than to go against what we discern might be the future of this one. I don't know who your this one is, but somebody may have seen you one day as a this one and decided that they would invest in you, protect you, to keep you from going. Why do you think it was you couldn't go outside and play at some time all the other kids did, but some of them died and you still here? Why do you think it was at some point that you could not participate in all the things that they had to do? You had to stay in the house and practice your piano lessons, or go to play the saxophone, or you had to go to Auntie's house, or they had to tell somebody where you was going, and you had to meet the mama, they had to meet the daddy, the mama had to go sit at the party with you, and you sit up there thinking you were spoiled. Why do you think you were such a protected child? It could have been because somebody saw something in you worth protecting. Why do you think you had to come in the house right before the gunshots went off? Why do you think you left the party before the oil starts spilling? Some of y'all get that later. Why do you think maybe what you thought was a heartbreak was actually the best gift you ever had in your life? Why do you think that God made somebody leave you that you didn't have sense enough to leave yourself? You do know that later on, that same Pharaoh, at some point when God got ready to liberate them, he didn't have to just let Moses run them out. He made Pharaoh sick of them. God will make your enemies sick of you till he tells you get out. Oh, that's another. But you ought to know that the real one you ought not be angry with or fearful of is not a mean Pharaoh, but an angry God that might go on a killing spree if you mess with his children. All through the text, you'll see the hand of God, the unseen hand of God moving throughout history. He protected Moses then. He protected Moses all through his life, just like he wants to do you. But the question is, who are you protecting? I want to come to this part of the text that says she hid him 3 months. Because they saw he was goodly and she hid him. There's something about a growing baby that I guess you can't hide no more. Something about a growing child that you can't keep a secret no more. Yeah, they start eating a lot. They start requiring more formula. They start making more noise. Their activity levels start getting, their ingenuity starts increasing, their motor skills, their questions, and others. And when some people don't know how you grow and how you develop, they start putting labels on you because they don't understand you. Yeah. There was a senator who asked for a black waiter who was working his way through Howard University. And he came through the school through what they would now call a DEI program. But the truth is that he was literally actually a genius, but they had misdefined and interpreted how he learned. They didn't know that he actually had some challenges with dyslexia. They didn't understand some other pieces, but they just kept putting him in these crazy classes, other places. But he actually turned out to be genius, but he made it. Got to Howard. Got through, passed the title. And when he got there, he took on a job as a waiter. And as he was a waiter, he waited at a restaurant where all the highfalutin judges and congresspersons and senators and presidential types would always come to eat. And they would see this young black boy who would come, and he would come waiting on them and doing the best he could. And people would ask him as they would come, so what do you want to do when you graduate? He says, I'm going to be a senator. I'm going to be a president. He was always saying something highfalutin, and they would just sneer and laugh at him. And they would discount him as nothing. Well, one day, this waiter was kind of taking his time serving, and so the senator said, excuse me, but did I not ask you for some butter about 5 minutes ago? Young man said, yes, sir, but I'm helping these older senior ladies to establish and get in their seat. He said, well, excuse me, sir. I am the senator from Massachusetts. And I want some butter. The young waiter turned, set the ladies down, took his time, looked at him and said, excuse me, sir, but I am somebody too. And the senator looked at him and says, and sir, and who are you? He says, I am the Negro with the butter. Y'all get that later. Y'all get that another time. Sometime maybe you ain't got your senator stuff together yet. Maybe you ain't got your presidential look on yet. Maybe you ain't got your graduation degree yet. But you ought to know what you got, because whatever you got, somebody gonna need it somewhere along the way, and they gonna be asking you for your butter. So be clear about what you have and who you are. Yeah, you ought to know where that was going with it. That's why we had to have Howard universities. That's why we needed to have historically black colleges and universities. Because, beloved, there was a time when the edict came. It's not the first time, but when they wanted to close the departments of education, when they were miseducating our children, when they wouldn't let us in their schools, we birthed arcs that would hide our children until they could learn who they are. In 1863, the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, slavery de facto was supposed to be abolished. Frederick Douglass and others reminded us that freedom wasn't free. And after the end of the Civil War, Reconstruction was ushered in starting 1865. But right after that, black codes were instituted, and they lied to us about the 40 acres, and the mule ain't showed up yet. We should have known if they stole somebody else's land, they would probably lie to us too. We were making strides in those 13 years, opening businesses, starting insurance companies, entering Congress and Senate. Then we still weren't free, but Mary Jane Patterson, the first black woman to graduate from college in Oberlin, said, I want to get a quality education. And in 1867, Howard University was started in Washington, D.C. Atlanta University and Morehouse College opened in Atlanta. Johnson C. Smith College in Charlotte, North Carolina, followed by Dillard University in New Orleans, 1869. Howard University Law School, 1871. I can go down the list because Virginia Union's on that list too. But they all were birthed, and many of them were birthed by churches. That's why they got church connections in their background, because somebody went into their church basements and said, we got to educate our own children. They sent them to school with money and handkerchiefs tied in a knot. That was their financial aid. They said, we got to hide our babies. Are y'all listening to me? They opened up what we got to do now for ourselves and open up freedom schools. Don't get so upset when somebody tells what they going to close down. The question is, what you going to open up that never should have closed down? They opened up more black colleges than alumni who graduated from them are trying to keep open. Because we've forgotten about our own legacy. We've forgotten how we protected our own future. The freedom schools, what later some people call Saturday schools, or whatever you want to call it, were designed for us to do more than just preach on Sundays. Jews have a temple where they have for their worship, but they got a synagogue where they teach. And the children who are going to be protected in this age are going to have to learn civics and economics, and they're going to have to learn education and everything else they're going to have to learn, because when they shut down everything else and they can do it tomorrow, because it ain't been but 2 weeks and they're closing up a whole bunch of stuff right now. But you ought not get mad, get glad, because they're sending you back to the place where you can hide your children. And it starts. You know, did you really thought that your history ought to be taught over at the public school or at your house? Did you really think that they should hear the first learning about Jesus in the second grade teacher? Or at your church, in your basement? At some point, we got to take serious how to protect our children. Moses' mama couldn't afford to educate her son. But God fixed it so that she had a way to be able to deal with this. They are killing our boys in these depopulation plans, and God has a way of raising them up if you protect them and use them in places where they were. Don't leave them in the care of people who don't share your morals, your values, your principles, your disciplinary actions. Don't just leave your child with anybody. The reason why they're dumbing out is because they don't know that they come from the Mecca of learning. They don't know that reading, writing, mathematics, or architecture was founded in their ancestry. When they could no longer hide him, is a text that reminds us that at some point we knew to hide our children until they got to a place where they could stand for themselves. Had they not hid baby Jesus, he never would have grown to be the man baptized in the Jordan and say, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, healing the sick, raising the dead, casting out devils, and dying one Friday. But he had to be hidden before they could elevate him. The reason why your children don't learn well is because they don't know people who understand them very well. We have to hide them because there are people who don't know what it is. You need to know just because you graduated with your degree don't make you the best person in the place because your degree deals with. Moses' mama did not have a degree, but she knew how to raise that child. Because not only did she not only have the ability and have the courage to protect them, she understood that somebody can have the cost to protect them if you trust God. She couldn't pay for it. But the 20th century pharaohs who said they were going to kill him, she understood some people are so hungry for power, they will misuse, abuse infants and children with no regard for their health, their well-being, because they want to satisfy their own agendas. 20th century pharaohs ain't just dope dealers, game bangers, and child molesters. Sometimes they sit with black and white suits on, blue and red ties on, and they make decisions over people that ultimately have dependency on them only for federal care, but that's not the only care God gives them. Don't get me wrong, some of them are misused not more on the White House, they get misused in their own house. Some get misused even in the church house. Mean mission sisters, sedated Sunday school teachers, cranky children workers, yucky youth workers, old burdensome trustee boys, trifling people who act like kids don't belong on nothing but Children's Day. What, you want to go down, sit in the basement, sit down, shut up, take this piece of candy? You are abusing. Pharaohs and people like that don't want to worship, they want to kill. They don't want to cradle and cuddle, they slap and kick. They don't feed them, they fight them. They don't protect them, they neglect them. They don't educate them, they annihilate them. They don't facilitate them, they incarcerate them. They don't mold them, they murder them. They don't employ them, they destroy them. But our children deserve to live. Oh, you know I didn't come to shout you. I just came to finish what I started. Because the text says to us, God has a way of getting his people where they need to be. You do know that at some point the reason why your child don't learn is because some old sedated person with a master's degree thought they knew how to train and teach them. But real teachers don't try to make children learn how they teach, but they learn how to teach how a child learns. And you got a lot of people who were miseducated because nobody spent the time to deal with them. They weren't learning disabled. The teacher was. They wasn't attention deficit. Their parents were. The fact is, we put the label on the child, but the label deserved to be on the person that did not protect them. They ain't LD and AD. You have a responsibility. Somebody say, I got to have the courage. And if I have the courage, he'll make somebody else pay the cost. Oh, it's in the text. Because in the text it says that when they got to the place when she couldn't hide him, she said, I got to do something. She made an ark for him. She put him out there. She had to let him go. Mamas, let me say this one thing to you. Once you've done all you can at a certain level, you got to learn how to release that child. Because some of y'all do a good job raising them up, but then you don't let them go. You do a good job when they come in and curl them. I know I made y'all happy, and I'm going to make you snappy. At some point, you got to know when to cut it off. Come on, help me here. Come here. Come on back here. Don't you leave now. Oh, yeah. Listen, you don't need no 50-year-old you still feeding in your basement. At some point, you need how to cut it off. Come on, talk to me here. If he's in your house, he ought to be paying the mortgage. At some point, he ought to be finding a way to take care of you. At some point, he ought to be able to step up and provide for you. At some level, you got to know when it switches because you got to raise a king and queen and not a 50-year-old baby playing video games and then asking you to borrow your car and $20 every other day. No, the smoke coming from your basement ain't food cooking. It's weed smoking. Somebody say, cut it off. She had to let that child go. Put him swim on the Nile and trust that at some point God's going to have somebody else to look after my baby. Is there anybody here that had to let their baby go? I don't know when it was. Yes, I know. I can remember when I had to let the youngest go to college. I got to a place when I saw little Sydney was in the place where she was the last one coming out the door, and she was going, and yes, she left. I drove her all the way down to Atlanta, got her all packed in. Then I drove all the way, better come back home. She got in the car to come home with me, and I let her come on back. And we drove all the way back, amen, all them hours from Atlanta. After we got our car filled, she come walking in, I come walking in the house with her. And Jay looking at me, and she said, I thought you took her to college. I said, I did. She said, why is she here? I said, I don't know. She just got in the car, and I drove. The problem was I didn't want to let her go. Y'all missing what I'm saying? So we just hold the week. I said we need one more church service, and she need to sing one more song, and we need to have one more dinner. Come on here, and we need to have one more. And so we did all that, and then I had to, when I saw how much the ticket was to fly back down there, it was easy to let her go then, because I wasn't doing that no more, because that last minute ticket to Atlanta was a bite. I said that's all right. But when I got her to the airport and I walked out, Jay didn't even get out the car. She sat there with her arms folded and let me walk in. I walked in, she was going through the line, and when she got up there to the TSA agent and they took the ticket, she looked around and turned, and I saw that little tear coming down her eye. I started jumping over ropes. I started climbing over people, and the security guard started coming, and a black woman saw it and said, leave him alone. I see what's happening. And she let me get up there to hug her one more time, and then she went and tapped me on the shoulder and said, now, sir, let her go. Come on, help me somebody. At some point, as hard as it is, no matter what it takes, you got to come to a point. They'll never graduate if you don't let them go. They'll never elevate if you don't let them go. You got to keep praying for them and love them differently. Go from the umpire to a coach. At some point, you don't start calling the balls and strikes and tell them. You start asking questions. Do you think that's the best thing? So when are you coming up with? At some point, you got to let them develop their mind. At some point, you got to let them develop their choosing, their critical thinking skills. If you don't let them and trust them to the Nile, I know there are crocodiles in the Nile, but let them go. If you did your job, you'll be all right. I know there's snakes in the river, but if you did your job, they'll be okay. I know that there's predators all around, but when you put them in the right ark, God has a way. If you have the courage, watch this. He got such a sense of humor. He'll make the person who tried to kill him pay the cost. Be funny like that. I'm just trying to tell you about how God's in charge, Nico. I said the one who said that they won't kill a boy. Can't you see it? Miriam is watching this bassinet, and it looks like all the predators are swimming around the ark, and couldn't no water from the outside get on the inside because mama knew how to pitch it. Come on here, with the right kind of slime and mud, and put the sticks right where it was and laid the baby. Listen, it ain't the quality, the look of the ark, it's the quality of the build. And it was something about how she laid that ark and put that baby there that it protected him from the outside. It may not have been the Taj Mahal of boats, but it was good enough to get him to the next destination. And when the boat pulled up and Pharaoh's daughter pulls this baby out the bassinet, Audrey, she looks and sees the same thing in the child that the midwife saw. And she looks, and this childless woman says, listen, I think I'm going to keep this one for myself. And she looked and she says, but I don't know nothing about nursing. That's the reason why some folk had to hire some people from another continent to come take care of their own children. So don't let nobody tell you you ain't no good mama when you had to raise your children and theirs. How you going to have somebody tell you that you don't work and you had to come over here to do the work and have somewhere? You ought to know who you are and have yourself some dignity. And it just so happened that Miriam was close enough to say, I can find somebody for you. Went and got her mama. Her unemployed mama. Need a job, grieving my child back home praying, look after mama. And the next thing you know, Miriam saying, Mama, they got a job for you. What's the job, baby? Taking care of your child. Y'all don't understand. Y'all don't understand. She said, what? She goes, no, come here. She got up to the place, and she got to the place. She says, yes, ma'am. She said, well, I just need you to do me a favor. This is Pharaoh's daughter talking to my. She said, can you help me raise this child? And if you can help me raise this child, I'll pay you. She said, wait a minute, let me get this right. This baby right here, this one, you gonna pay me to teach this child, raise this child, do everything I can do, beat him out, and you gonna pay me. And I, excuse me 1 minute, can you turn that way while I go this way? God has a way of developing his own affirmative action program. He don't need the government. He has a way of raising his own DEI program. He don't need no system. God has a way of taking care of you if you determine that take care of your responsibility. Preach, Reverend Bland. I'm here to tell you, God has provided for too many of you in here for you to be scared at this juncture now. This is a time when we raise up and say, God, help me take care of this child. Oh, God. Miriam was able, y'all sit down, I'm done, I am. Miriam was able to navigate his path back to the ghettos of Goshen, to be nursed by his own mama. Look at God at work in Moses' history. Fed by his mama, babysat by his sister, but financed by Pharaoh. Yes, Pharaoh, yes, had his own DEI program. But then he want to kill it, thinking he's going to kill all the babies. You got some pharaohs that want to kill DEI, but everybody in that cabinet is a DEI high. Yeah, didn't earn it. All or most pharaohs' cabinet picks get confirmed and they ain't not got no clue how to do the work. But you don't call that no name. But there's only one line on all their job description, and that is be loyal to Pharaoh. Secretary of Defense, be loyal to Pharaoh. Treasury, be loyal to Pharaoh. State of State, be loyal to Pharaoh. Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, Labor, Health and Human Services, Trustee, whatever it is. But you got to know it don't matter what people say or do for loyalty, because God still has the ultimate job description. By the way, you think the only HUD appointment is the only chocolate chip in the cookie? NFL commissioner, businessman, is more qualified than Marsha Fudge, who was the first black woman and had legislation to do it, and you're going to wipe out everything that an intelligent black woman did, and all you did was run footballs and deal with that, and in the name of the culture, you don't think there's something wrong with that picture? You see, at some point, I don't hold people responsible for some stuff they do, but when we start doing some stuff, you're the only one that they got, and then you're going to go right along with the picture. You got to be careful, because I would pick young, intelligent Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas than a beach, blonde, bad-built, butch-bodied person who going to work there and run their mouth all day long, and if you're not careful, you're going to fool around and watch people look at you and tell you you don't qualify. Everybody in here knows you had to be twice as good as the other person, had to do twice as much, had to go twice as far. So what you complaining about? That's the story of our life. That's who we've always been. That's what we've done. But what God does, never has we been to a place where it was your qualifications that made the difference. God opened doors that no man can close. The reason why you made it is because God had the last word in your life, not your resume. Your resume's always been good, but nobody wanted to read it. But God has a way of giving somebody a chance when nobody else can do it, that they call for you. And you have to come in here, Esther, and speak for the people. Whatever it is, look at your neighbor and say, you don't like me right now, but they'll be sending for me later. I got to go now because I'm a free runner and stop calling balls and strikes. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, I don't care what they got on the paper. I know one thing. God's got his hand on me. And whatever he's got for me. Oh, come on, let's get out of here. It is for me. Can I get a witness here? No wonder the child grew. Because at some point Moses knew that he had too much of his mama in him. Can I get a witness here? That's why we can't be graduating dropouts. Got children that can rap but can't read. They can wiggle but can't work. They say word up but can't write the words down. They can rhyme but can't reason. They can text but can't talk. They can tweet but still cheat. Got cell phones but no house notes. They can roll a reefer but can't write a resume. They can hit a blunt but can't hit a book. They can crack a pipe but can't cast a vote. We need to raise some new Moses. Can I get a witness here? They got zigzag papers but can't write a paper. They got some kush, can't keep no cash. They down with OPP, can't pass an ACT. Act a fool, but won't go to school. They can go to jail, but can't go to Yale. They can go to the state pen, but can't make it at Penn State. They got a case with the state of Michigan, but can't take a briefcase to Michigan State. You know that somebody can count dope money, but can't pass a math test because we ain't doing our job to raise a new Zebulon Moses. They know the girl's body parts, but can't pass astronomy. They can mix drugs, but can't pass chemistry. They can hit on some stars, but don't know who made the stars. They got a smartphone, but they a dumb operator. They can speak in tongues, but can't say good morning. They can do the cha-cha slide, but can't do the graduation walk. But I came to tell somebody, it's time to protect our legacy. It's time to rise up, you people of God. Don't be declaring no black history in February. Every day of my life, I'm history walking. I'm Marguerite's child. I'm Steve's boy. I'm God's destiny. Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, don't belittle yourself. You are somebody. Before Jesse ever said it, God said it. God made you, and that's all you need to know. Give somebody a high five and say, I feel my somebodyness coming on. I feel my help coming. Don't you see a baby that was somebody, came from something, born into nothing, passed through 42 generations, down in the slum of the slums to show us how we rise again. He was born not in a bassinet, but in a manger. He was born not in opulence, but in decadence. He was born not in blankets, but in swaddling clothes, horse trough, blankets for church for horses, cows and asses. But can't you see him? I said, can't you see him? Laying there like a goodly child. But shepherds came, wise men came, because wise people know how to bless a baby. Somebody ought to be blessing him right now. He was raised by another man's father. Can I tell somebody the story? I said he was raised by another man who was not his father. So daddies, don't give me the excuse about raising somebody else's child. Jesus was somebody else's child. But thank you, Joseph, for showing us how you raise a child till it's time. You don't hear about Joe no more after Jesus steps out at 33 and says it's time for me to be baptized. 3 long years, heal the sick, raise the dead, baptized into Jordan. His mama went all the way with him. But one day at the cross, when she see she couldn't go no farther, he said, Mama, don't worry about me now. You raised me for my destiny. Can I get a witness here? Mama stood as far as she could go. He said, son, take care of my mama. Mama, take care of my son. But he looked up to his father, said, my work is finished. Is there anybody here like me that wants to finish what God started? Is there anybody here that wants to finish the work God put in you? I feel good. Finish. Finish. Yeah. It wasn't over until he said, Father, in your hand I give you my spirit. You can have my notes. He's got my spirit. You can have my clothes. He's got my spirit. You can have the books. You can have the bank. You can have the cars. You can have the cash. But the best part of me is in his hand. Into your hands, I'm in my spirit. And one of these old days, when this life is over, I'm going to say, Father, I stretch my hand to thee, because my legacy has always been in your hands. My destiny has always been. Well, I know there's been some gators trying to cut me. No. Stop talking about your circumstances. Stop dealing with your adversities. You need to rehearse how you graduated from the University of Adversity to the place where God took what they meant to you for evil. Maybe you haven't lived long enough to see it, but I've seen it a few times already in my life. With the very thing they thought that they would keep from me, God used some of those same people that had to usher me in and walk me in and make me have my seat. And you got to have a spirit of destiny to know he put you there not because you were all that. He put you there because he expects you to protect others who are coming behind you. To keep a door open for those here and yet unborn. You're not there because you were so wonderful. You were there because God could trust your gatekeeping capacity. God's favor is not best seen when his hand is on you. His favor is best seen when his hand is on somebody else and you can celebrate it. Because you helped make the way. You ain't got to tell everybody what you did. You don't have to put it on. The pastor ain't got to call your name. But if you are shipwrecked and poor, and that's the only mention they get. But if it had not been for them, Moses wouldn't have been where he was. Sometimes you got to see a child that's too anointed to be anonymous. I would have closed, Mother, on that part of the text that said that at the moment where it was time for Moses' release, the text says the baby hollered. That's why I read another part of that. And you know, you can't tell a black preacher to holler because they will. So I wanted to say this without my hollering voice on. There's a point when you need to learn to shut up. Because while he was on the Nile, he made no sound. While he was surrounded by his predators and the dangers, he made no noise. While he was in the throes of death's door, he made no outcry. But the moment he arrived at the place of his possibility, he hollered. I just want somebody right now who believes that God is moving you past every predator, every challenge, every situation that tried to get you where you are. If you believe you at destiny's door, this is a safe place to holler. Open up your mouth and say, Lord, use me. Lord, save me. Lord, it's my time. Lord, I'm ready. Holler. Holler. This ain't a preacher holler. It's a I'm a survivor holler. Holler. Heaven needs to hear your holler. It was at the holler that got his daughter's attention. It was the holler that made him find somebody to take care of this child. It was the holler that says, I can't do this one alone. God made Pharaoh finance the future of the exterminator that would take him out of office. You never know what God is doing with one of these children. That's why I get excited about their baptisms and get excited about their growth, and because we have a new set of arcs. And beloved, I've said to us, and I want you to hear me, before this month is over, we're going to open up the Transformation Center to be, you call it whatever you want to, Saturday school, freedom school, leadership school, yo school, whatever. But we're going to open it up and start teaching our own children literacy. And I'm not just talking about how to read. I'm talking about financial literacy, civics training, cultural learning. Come on here now. Not to mention history and your own understanding of the Word of God. We're going to open up the doors for after school and before school. If they want to take out Head Start and feeding programs, then we're going to get our own juice and crackers, our little oranges, things we've done before. Stop depending on Pharaoh to finance what God has given you the power to do. I plead with you to hear God's voice for yourself, because you can start with those you're responsible for, you're accountable for. I labored to just say basically one thing. You have to protect your legacy if you really do love yourself. I know there's courage that's needed. I know there's a cost that's needed, but I also know that Christ is the answer in every crisis. The door that I open every Sunday is a door of opportunity for you to be able to establish for yourself that, Lord, I realize that somebody opened that door for me. Maybe they didn't do it the way you thought it should be done. Okay, I tell you what, if nobody gave you the future, the destiny that you wanted, then since you made it this far on your own, then take what you got, package it up, bottle it up, and teach it, and I'll put you over there to teach the class. If you know how to do it the way, because nobody did it for you and you figured it out, I need you too. But I need people who are willing to be able to say, like the text says, because it says, and when he grew, this is verse 10, and when he had grown up, he came to know himself. There's that word again. How did Moses get to know himself when he grew? I tell you how, because while she was taking care of him, showing him around the Egyptian places, she was whispering into his ear who he was. She was telling him about Abraham. She was teaching him about Isaac. She was birthing him on the issue of Jacob. She was helping him know his history, his destiny. God put him in the hands of somebody that could remind him. So when he faced a confrontation later on, the Bible says the reason why he could stand up for himself, because he knew who he was. Yes, sometime it'll get you in trouble, but that same God will get you out. Yes, sometime it may get you to a place of trouble, but God has a way of using that trouble to bring you right back to deliver the same people that you got in trouble with. I don't know what your future is going to be, but I know this one thing. God has a future for everybody that's listening to me. Lift your right hand if you receive today the fact that there's a future already pronounced over your life. You don't have to pronounce it. It's already done. It was done before you got here. The Bible says about Jesus that the Lamb was slain before the foundations of the world. It wasn't an afterthought because of something the devil did. God doesn't give the devil much thought. The devil is a lifer in hell, not the warden of hell. He's waiting sentence. Your destiny is between you and God. Lift high that right hand like you're pledging and releasing to yourself that your hand is in the hand of God. If you really believe today that as a result of that lifted hand, that it's a sign of saying that I pledge allegiance to a God who gave favor to me one day. That I lift this right hand because it's the hand of strength and honor. It is the hand of saying, greater than anyone or anyone else, God, I lift my hand to thee. Father, I stretch my hand to thee. It's a sign of dependence on no one but God, no other helper. I know. I lift you even now. He leans towards you. He leans towards you. If you want to surrender something you haven't surrendered before, but you want God to have it all, lift the left hand with it. It's a sign of total surrender. Lord, whatever I haven't released yet, I release it now. Whatever I let go of now, I'm letting it go in this moment. Lord, I release anything that might be an impediment to you using me the way you want to. In this moment, in this season, I have no fear. I only have faith. That if I surrender to you, that you will not let me fall, you will not let me down. Lifted hands everywhere that choose to do so by way of this edict, I say to you now, Father, I ask you to breathe on everyone whose hand is lifted. They come into the sanctuary as a place where they could be protected against all the things of the world and the earth that might come against them, whoever and wherever and whatever it might be. But we totally surrender to you now. Like it was in the days of Moses, his name was named because you drew him out of his trouble. The waters that would have killed him, you drew him out from. The waters that would have taken him under, you drew him out from. He was drawn out to be lifted up, to be used of you in a special way. Draw out of somebody right now with a lifted hand anything that is not of you, that's an impediment to their growth. Draw out of them any evil thing, oh God, in ways or mindset that will not let them be yielded to you at this moment. But while you're drawing out, pour in, God. Pour in, pour in, pour in. A double portion of your spirit, your grace, your love, your mercy. Breathe upon them even now. And Lord, I say to you, thank you for what you've already done in this moment. It is done. It is decreed and declared in Jesus' name. Now take those lifted hands and clap them even now and like you mean it. My God, what a time in worship we had today. I tell you, it's nothing like being in worship at the Liberty Temple Baptist Church at our Greater 8 service. I trust that something you heard today, a song, a prayer, the praise, and more importantly, the Word of God. I trust you received something that you can take with you now and make a difference in your life in this week. Well, I trust that you also remember our announcements. And don't forget, we got Bible class on Tuesdays at 6:30 p.m. where you can learn more about the Word of God. Well, I need to say to you right now, it's your opportunity. You can give. You can use Givelify. You can use Cashapp. You can come to our church, or you might be able to go online to $ Liberty Temple Baptist or Givelify, look for the torch. But for right now, I want to give you this blessing because the blessing of God in your life is what's more important. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine brightly upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift the light of his countenance upon you, and may he grant you his shalom, his peace. Till we meet again, keep looking up.